I'm Nolan Beilstein, and welcome to another episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing, a series where I talk with young workers about their jobs in the manufacturing industry and what they look for from an employer. For this installment, I welcome Tomas Guillen, a 25-year-old controls engineer at Patti Engineering, a company that integrates automation, robotic, and digitalization technologies in industrial facilities. Tomas began his time at Patti as an intern and became a full-time employee in June 2022. After more than 3 years with Patti, Tomas's duties have grown to handling his own project, where he is choosing the hardware, drafting the electrical design, and making necessary PLC changes for an electrical panel that will be interacting with new equipment on a factory floor. Before we hear from Tomas, please make sure to like and share this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, please contact me, Nolan Beilstein, at nolan@ien.com. Well, Tomas, thank you for joining us on Gen Z in Manufacturing. To start off, I wanted to ask you to kind of describe your journey into the field of controls engineering and what initially sparked your interest in this career path.
Yeah, it basically caught me by surprise. I wasn't aware that this industry existed in the first place. And I was wandering around a career fair at my college, and I was looking around and I made eye contact with this guy standing at Georgia Pacific. So I made eye contact with him. I walked up to the guy and I was practicing presenting myself, everything that I have to offer. And little did I know, I was talking to the controls engineer of this factory in Seguin, Texas. And I presented as much as I knew, I guess. And little did I know that this marble sorting project that I did my freshman year was basically a Lego version of a factory in terms of the thinking that is required to be a controls engineer. So that opened the door. That was my first internship in the controls engineering world, and I really enjoyed it. And then the following year, again at career fair, there was Patti Engineering. They were looking for full-time people, and I was halfway through my elevator pitch and I realized, oh, you guys aren't looking for interns. Sorry. And they're like, oh, okay, like leave your resume, see what happens. So then I ended up, long story short with that, I interned with them for that summer and the following summer, and then that led me to my full-time job here at Patti Engineering.
Yeah, so 3 controls engineering internships throughout college, the last 2 being at your current employer. So what drew you to Patti Engineering, and then how did those internships kind of shape your decision to work there full time?
I was very interested in Patti Engineering because it's a unique controls engineering opportunity. On a frequent basis, you are alternating between these different projects. You're constantly being presented with new learning opportunities, we'll call it, not problems, learning opportunities. So, I mean, the rate that I have been learning at with this type of job has been just tenfold compared to even if I was just a controls engineer at one factory. It's the fact that I'm rotating around to all of these different locations. And then that's the other pro that I was interested in, is the travel. It's not just... But that's one thing that I kind of realized when I was working 50-hour weeks at the Georgia Pacific factory. That was a bit of a shock to my system as an intern when I was working those hours at the same factory every day. I was like, don't know how sustainable this is, but that's also 20-year-old brain. Perhaps when I graduated college, it would have been a bit different, but that is another thing that I greatly appreciate about this, is the ever-changing dynamic environment.
What are some of the projects and responsibilities you've been involved in since you joined?
When I joined full-time, I was essentially thrown right into the deep end. I was responsible for not necessarily full-fledged electrical drawings, but a wiring guide, so that so in summary, there was this factory that was having all of its old controls ripped out. And then it was 30-year-old Allen Bradley control systems. And we were ripping all of that out and putting new Siemens PLCs in. And the idea is take all of the I/O out of the old system and plug all of that I/O back into the Siemens system, and fingers crossed, everything will work. So it's a combination of balancing both the hardware and software with that. So that project was broken into 4 different engineers that were all working on different sections of the factory. So I was assigned my own section of that factory. And yeah, it was the deep end. It was straight into the real engineering world, because everything down to understanding the hardware that I'm going to be controlling, understanding the software that I need to adapt in order to get it to interface with all the other engineers that I'm working with. That was a big jump, but I enjoyed it. And since then, I guess, since after my baptism, everything else has been quite, I guess, digestible. It's still a challenge, but everything that followed was fun as well.
What is the age range at Patti Engineering? Are you working with people your own age, or are you mostly working with workers that are older than you?
So they have been scooping up people from my university quite a bit. I am the 3rd hire from Texas A&M. So we have like a recently new generation from A&M, but then the senior engineers that have been in the company for a while, at least in our Texas office, they will say 32 and then 45. Yeah, so the whole office is more so on the low end of the scale.
So based on what you told me, it sounds like there's a lot of people your own age with you're immediately working with. How do you think that Patti's been able to attract all these young workers?
Really, what it comes down to, I would say, is we all had the aptitude for this job. That's one thing that I noticed with these controls jobs, is they're not necessarily looking for anything in particular that you learned from school. It's just, do you present this certain aptitude, and we'll teach you everything from there. Where as far as a company is concerned, like we're open to all ages, I guess. It's just been working out for these new hires.
And I understand that you've recently started handling your own project. Can you share some details about that?
Yes. So before, with the project that I described at the beginning, it was still under heavy supervision, this new project has been under heavy supervision as well, but it's really just to put me through the motions of all the steps that, from a project opening at the very beginning to a project being completed. Because now what I've been doing is not just the hardware, not just the software, but interfacing between our customers as well. So that just because we're this small company that's directly interfacing with the people that manage this distribution center, it's been added to the armada of my skill set, I guess. It's been cool to not just do tasks that are delegated to me, but work on, it basically getting to the point where I can manage a project altogether.
What kind of challenges do you think you've encountered in this process?
Having the organization to balance all of the various tasks that are happening at the same time, because the tasks, the projects that I've been doing in the past, those have been structured by someone who already knows how to manage these projects that I've been working under. So that has definitely been the biggest challenge now that I'm kind of working my way up to having that type of capability, being able to manage the various moving parts that are all happening at the same time, I would say.
So I know a common critique among Gen Z is that their employer doesn't provide guidance or room to grow and expand skills, but I know you told me that you've been under the supervision of a lot of your more elder coworkers. So what kind of mentorship and guidance have you received from them?
So much. That's one thing that I have really loved about this field is, it's pretty intimidating to step out of the, I guess, protection of college and what it feels like to be in your routine and studying and passing exams. And, okay, now I need to actually do some real engineering work. That is a big step to take. And that's one thing that I really appreciate about my job is there's a nice balance between my superiors wanting to challenge me and, put a little bit of problem solving to whatever's at hand. But whenever I hit a strong roadblock, it's nothing but support.
And you also mentioned that you've got some administrative tasks and project planning that you have to do aside from just the technical work. So how are you developing those skills? And you come in with a strong controls engineering background, but then how do you develop those new administrative skills?
As far as the administrative skills, I guess when I hear that, I think the paperwork surrounding the project, what I've found is it tends to naturally integrate itself, just because now whenever I finish a week's worth of traveling at a different factory, I'm already thinking about, okay, what do I need to have on my service report? What do I need to put on for my expenses? So really the surrounding administrative work is habit-based with a little bit of a schedule or calendar that is reminding you, but that part hasn't been too intense.
And this question could date back to any of your internships, but have you ever seen any tension between different generations in the workplace, whether it's, how to go about carrying out a task or a work ethic?
Just from my experience, I'm sure that it's present, but from my experience, no, just because everyone at the Georgia Pacific factory was very friendly. It was weird to be a 20-year-old still feeling like a young college student and have people double my age call me sir. So that was a trip. But the thing that I'll say is everyone here is always looking for the best solution, the best approach. So as long as you are humble about your thought process and you're genuinely looking for the best way to approach the problem, I feel that people always have open ears in the event that I have some unthought of solution, they would definitely hear me out.
It sounds like you're pretty pleased with how Patti's been handling the younger workers. So what kind of advice would you give to manufacturing employers that to help them attract and retain Gen Z talent?
Yeah, I guess just put an emphasis on we will train you because that is the scariest thing. There's some type of pressure that when you approach a real, I guess in my sense, controls engineering job, or that's what I was thinking at least, that you must have an extensive knowledge on all of this various hardware and everything, how it works together. In my experience, it's been, okay, how quickly can you learn? How quickly can you problem solve these things that we're going to put you with? So if these manufacturers put more effort into saying, hey, like, of course, knowledge is preferred, but don't stress yourself out about it. Like, really, we want to see what you're capable of once we put you to the test.
And for those employers that are finding it difficult to bridge that gap between older and younger workers, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Sure. Yeah. For the jobs that perhaps have a more structured daily routine where you're doing similar tasks on a week-to-week basis, I can see how there's friction between the older and younger generations. So the way that I would see it, who's to say if they would want my advice, but the very real fact that the industrial scene is constantly adapting. If you look at this industrial process that, okay, so you have your 60, 70, well, maybe, yeah, we'll say 60-year-old operator or industry manufacturing worker that is doing X task. A nice reminder would be, oh, okay, let's look at the 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that was the optimal way to do it. So, just be conscious of the very real fact that things are always changing. I really could not extend too deep of advice just because thankfully I haven't had that friction, and I really haven't had enough experience myself to resolve that problem. Yeah.
And just finally, how do you see the role of Gen Z contributing to the development and innovation in the manufacturing and specifically controls engineering field?
Just because of the fact that we do tend to be more integrated with our technology, that will already have a subconscious, intuitive wiring, so that when we're presented with certain problems out in the field, that's going to come to our mind and say, oh, what certain steps can we do to what creative solutions can we find that will implement these up and coming technologies that maybe our older predecessors haven't had the exposure to, not necessarily that they're against, but just it's not directly accessible. So I would think that, this younger generation is going to already have those instincts wired in for those types of problems.
Thanks for watching this episode of Gen Z in Manufacturing. To see previous episodes, you can visit manufacturing.net, IEN.com, infomag.com, designdevelopmenttoday.com, or mbtmag.com. If you are a member of Gen Z and would like to discuss your experience in the manufacturing industry, you can reach me at nolan@ien.com. For Tomas Guillen, I'm Nolan Beilstein. This is Gen Z in Manufacturing.